The lights on the Jimmy Kimmel live stage were bright, as always. The audience was full, clapping and laughing at the usual jokes. Jimmy stood at his desk, cracking a line about politicians being too young these days. The mood was light, almost too light. Then the guest walked in, Karoline Leavitt. She wore a red dress that matched her bold entrance. Her eyes scanned the room calmly. She didn't wave at the crowd. She didn't smile. She walked straight to her chair, shook Jimmy's hand with a firm grip, and sat down without a word. The audience clapped politely, unsure what to make of her silence. Jimmy, always trying to keep things relaxed, smiled and said, "You're very composed for someone trending online every other week." Karoline didn't respond. He leaned in, joked again. "I feel like I'm about to be told off by my niece." Still silence. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and spoke, her voice calm but sharp like glass. "You're used to guests playing along, Jimmy. I won't." The room fell quiet. Jimmy's smile dropped just a little. Few people in the audience chuckled nervously. The band played a small tune, trying to soften the moment. Jimmy cleared his throat. "Well, I guess we're skipping the warm-up," he said, trying to pivot. "Let's talk politics." He fired off questions quickly: election misinformation, media echo chambers, her stance on voter laws, her past statements about the press. The questions were fast, meant to trap her, confuse her, make her defensive. But Karoline didn't blink. She answered each question with directness. She didn't dodge. She didn't play safe. And she didn't apologize. "You talk about misinformation," she said. "But who decides what counts as truth?" The same people who called a laptop fake and later admitted it was real. Jimmy tried to interrupt. She kept going. "The media doesn't inform, it performs. You sell comedy, but your punchlines serve policy." Now Jimmy was shifting in his seat. The audience was still. This wasn't the usual show anymore. Karoline wasn't here to entertain. She was here for something else, something the cameras weren't ready for. "You're not a host, Jimmy," she said, eyes locked on his. "You're a gatekeeper, a government clown in makeup. And you know it." Jimmy laughed awkwardly. "Okay, now we're getting into tinfoil territory." But Karoline didn't let up. "Is it tinfoil if it's true? You joke about democracy while covering for people who kill stories, crush dissent, and call it journalism." Jimmy tried to switch topics. "Well, that's one way to look at it," he said, smiling nervously. "Let's talk about your rise in politics." But the show didn't continue. Suddenly, mid-sentence, the screen cut to black. "No, we'll be right back." No music, no applause, just silence. People watching at home thought their TVs had glitched. Social media exploded within seconds. What just happened on Kimmel? Was she cut off? Network error or censorship? Clips began spreading online, edited cell phone videos from inside the audience. They showed Karoline standing up, pulling off her mic, saying something off mic to a producer before being walked off stage. The producer looked pale. Security looked confused. Within an hour, #Karoline on Kimmel was trending. Speculation took over every platform. Some said she leaked classified info. Others claimed Kimmel's team cut the feed to protect the network. Some believed it was all planned for ratings. But the truth was, no one really knew what had happened or why. Then, someone leaked a 27-second audio file. It wasn't on video. It was picked up from a mic still hot backstage. In it, Karoline's voice could be heard saying, "They knew I'd say it. It's why they tried to stop the feed. But it's already out there." Another voice whispered, "What did you do?" Karoline replied, "I told the truth. Let them deal with it." The clip went viral in minutes. Newsrooms around the world picked it up. Major media outlets reported confusion at ABC headquarters. No official comment came from Jimmy or the network. His social media went silent. By morning, the White House press secretary was asked about the interview. She gave a tight smile and no answer. Karoline didn't appear on any morning shows. She didn't release a statement. She simply disappeared. But what she left behind, just one sentence, was now echoing across the internet. Louder than any punchline Jimmy Kimmel had ever delivered. The clip of Karoline's interview, or what remained of it, was everywhere by sunrise. News stations showed the moment the screen cut to black. Social media boiled with arguments, some calling her a hero, others labeling her dangerous. But everyone agreed on one thing: something had happened behind the scenes that no one was prepared for. In a quiet office on the 10th floor of a New York broadcast building, a group of executives and lawyers sat watching the footage on repeat. No one spoke for a long time. "She planned this," one finally muttered. "She knew we'd cut it." The head of legal looked up. "You've dealt with walkouts, shouting matches, even security scares. But this, she came for blood." At the same time, in Washington, D.C., an encrypted group chat among political aides lit up. One message read, "She referenced Operation Eclipse. Not by name, but close enough." "This is bad," another replied. "What the hell was she thinking?" a third. "She's forcing the story out. If the press doesn't bury this, we're exposed." Nobody replied to that. Elsewhere, a team of cybersecurity analysts working for an intelligence contractor scanned through forum threads, live streams, and leaked footage. They flagged audio spikes, zoomed into Karoline's lips during the backstage leak, and cross-referenced it with known whistleblower protocols. "This wasn't a meltdown," one of them said. "It was a message, a warning." By mid-morning, reporters were outside Karoline's D.C. apartment, but she wasn't home. In fact, she hadn't been seen since she walked off the set. Rumors circulated that she'd boarded a private jet hours after the segment ended. Some claimed she was headed to Europe. Others said she was in hiding. But one source, an anonymous producer from the Kimmel set, gave a chilling quote to a fringe journalist. "She didn't just walk in and hijack the show. She said things all fair, about people, about names. The kind of things that don't make it into comedy or politics. The kind of things that make powerful people nervous." Jimmy Kimmel stayed silent. His team issued a vague statement, blaming a technical error for the abrupt end of the show. But fans didn't buy it. His next episode was canceled out of an abundance of caution that only fueled more speculation. Then things got stranger. A senior editor at a major media outlet received an unmarked envelope. Inside were printed transcripts, records of off-air discussions between high-level political staff and entertainment figures. It included funding transfers, blackout agreements, and one phrase highlighted repeatedly: "Maintain narrative control." The editor showed it to his boss. By the next morning, he was placed on leave. A podcast that interviewed political insiders claimed they had spoken to someone who'd worked on Karoline's campaign. Someone who said she'd been approached months earlier by former intelligence officials offering to help her message land. She had refused, but she hadn't forgotten. "Karoline doesn't bluff," the source said. "When she says something big is coming, she's not looking for headlines. She's preparing for war." Meanwhile, intelligence chatter began to spike in London, Berlin, and Tel Aviv. Encrypted messages bounced across servers, using code words that hadn't surfaced since the Cold War. Private contractors received quiet updates. Monitor keywords like Project Aurora, Late Night Breach, and KLE-Co. At Langley, a red folder landed on a deputy director's desk. Subject: Leavitt. Karoline, unscheduled disclosure risk. The official read through it. Then, without speaking, picked up the phone and said, "Get me Homeland." But Karoline had already vanished. She hadn't gone to a hotel. She hadn't returned to her political offices. Surveillance missed her entirely after her car left the studio garage. The only clue came from a CCTV feed outside a private hangar at Lock's Graney. Footage of a woman in a coat and sunglasses stepping into a jet under a false name. As the sun set on that chaotic day, America stood on edge. The public didn't know the full story, but it knew something had broken. Something real. Something raw. It had started with a single sentence on late-night TV. But now it was something else entirely. A silence before the storm. By the third day, the noise around Karoline Leavitt's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live had become deafening. Headlines dominated every platform. Theories spun in 1,000 directions. Some called it a media stunt, others a calculated political ambush. But behind closed doors, far from the cameras and opinion pieces, high-level meetings were being called with one shared concern. What did she know? The White House Communications Office issued a brief, calculated statement. The administration has no comment on private broadcasts. But internally, aides were scrambling. An encrypted email circulated among intelligence liaisons with the subject line, Leavitt Kimmel breach, potential classified leak. In a secure conference room at Langley, the director of operations reviewed the full leaked backstage audio for the first time. His jaw tightened as Karoline's voice rang clear over the recording. You laugh on stage, but off stage you obey. Do you think you're mocking the system? You're protecting it. A tech analyst paused the playback. She knows about Project Iris. It's buried under 3 false names, and she described it almost word for word. Another operative leaned forward. We need to verify her source, and fast. Meanwhile, journalists from independent outlets began chasing the story with more force. One reporter, James Rourke, a former Foreign Desk correspondent turned media critic, went live on his podcast, breaking down frame by frame what he claimed was a visual Morse code in Karoline's blinking pattern during the live show. She was signaling, he said. And I've decoded it. The real story is buried inside entertainment. Most people laughed it off until a hacker collective known only as Signal Cell posted a decoded packet of internal late-night production memos, dated back years. Some were mundane, others were not. One document read, KL appearance approved under Protocol 17. Intercept themes, conspiracy, extremism, misinformation. Embed sub-narrative cues for online deflection. That document changed everything. The story wasn't just about Karoline's political stance anymore. It was about the machinery she had walked into and exposed. Late-night comedy, it now seemed, was not just satire, it was strategy. The studio where the Kimmel segment was filmed went into full lockdown. Producers were interviewed, phones were seized. Jimmy Kimmel himself hadn't left his Malibu estate in 2 days. Insiders claimed he was rattled, confused, and now cooperating with authorities for his own safety. But where was Karoline? In a safe house on the outskirts of Zurich, a private intelligence firm was running interference. Karoline sat in a quiet room, surrounded by silence, reviewing flash drives brought to her by an unnamed courier. The files contained transcripts, payments, surveillance photos, not just of her, but of media figures, lobbyists, and 2 sitting senators. Her phone buzzed with a message from an anonymous contact. You've opened the wound. If you stop, now, they will bury it. If you speak again, they will come after you harder. Choose. Karoline didn't reply. That same night, a classified server at Fort Meade was breached for precisely 4 minutes. The only file accessed an internal psychological profile labeled Subject, Leavitt K. The document contained evaluations from 2 retired behavioral analysts. It described Karoline as controlled, high-intellect, trauma-responsive, and ethically rigid. It warned of her ability to reverse interrogations, weaponize public platforms, and force systemic reveals by destabilizing narrative control. The final line was underlined twice. If cornered, she will burn the building down. And now it seemed the building was already smoldering. Back in Washington, the Senate Intelligence Committee prepared for a closed-door emergency session. Not over a terrorist threat, not over a foreign attack, but over what one member described as a domestic narrative breach with transnational implications. News anchors tried to calm the storm. Some shifted back to celebrity gossip. Others ran op-eds blaming Karoline's disruptive tone and attention-seeking behavior. But none of that worked. People felt something deeper. The public didn't just see a political fight on late-night television. They saw a system blink. The only question now was, what's next? And somewhere, watching it all unfold, Karoline Leavitt sat in silence, her eyes locked on a second envelope she hadn't opened yet. She slid a finger beneath the seal. Inside it read, 3 days after Karoline Leavitt's sudden disappearance, Washington was in panic mode. The Senate Intelligence Committee's closed-door session had ended, with more questions than answers. The phrase domestic narrative breach echoed through encrypted memos, private channels, and emergency media briefings. Late-night comedy shows went dark for a second straight night, an unprecedented move. The networks claimed it was due. 2 technical reasons, but insiders knew the truth. They were told to shut down. Too much heat, too much exposure. No one was laughing anymore. Meanwhile, Karoline's second video dropped. Not through any major platform, but on a small encrypted web node, shared anonymously on whistleblower forums. In it, she appeared calm, sitting in front of a plain black background. Her voice, firm and deliberate. They told me to stop. I won't. This isn't about me. It's about the machinery that scripts your outrage, filters your reality, and buries the truth under laughter. You don't have to agree with me, but you should. Know what's been done in your name. She paused, then leaned closer. Ask them what Protocol 17 is. Ask why your media licenses are tied to defense contractors. Ask who owns your silence. The video ended abruptly, but within minutes it had spread across the deep web, then Twitter, then Reddit. Then YouTube, despite takedown attempts. Millions watched. Millions more saved it offline. The term #Protocol 17 began trending globally. Newsrooms scrambled. Anchors tried to stay neutral, but even they looked shaken. Some speculated it was a hoax. Others claimed foreign disinformation. But no one could deny the chills that came from how specific, how deliberate Karoline's words were. She wasn't guessing. She was reporting. By midnight, 3 former intelligence officers had confirmed the term Protocol 17 was not fictional. Though details were murky, it allegedly involved a Cold War-era strategy where entertainment platforms were used to steer public perception away from real threats through humor, distraction, and disinformation. Originally devised for foreign audiences, it had since been normalized domestically. The implications were staggering. Jimmy Kimmel hadn't resurfaced. A leaked studio report suggested he had been placed on non-voluntary medical leave. Some said he'd broken down. Others said he was being debriefed under NDA, kept under surveillance. Meanwhile, in a quiet Washington suburb, a journalist named Emma Navarro sat in a parked car. Staring at the USB drive Karoline had mailed her before the interview ever aired. Inside the drive were folders titled PSYOPS_US Controlled Humor. Media Council briefings, guest filter, enemy voices. There were scanned documents, emails, photo evidence of on-set red flags, even internal risk. Memos from the network itself rating Karoline's appearance as a category red, uncontrollable variable. Emma knew if she published this, her career would be over. Or worse. But she also knew the story was too big. She called her editor. I'm dropping the file. Secure server only. You didn't hear it from me. She hit send and drove off. An hour later, her apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, just searched. Elsewhere, leaks poured out from Capitol Hill. A classified committee memo confirmed fears that Karoline's knowledge originated from internal whistleblowers with access to archived black-budget media operations. The memo described her as a high-risk narrative disruptor with capacity for multi-domain exposure. Social media platforms began throttling any content related to Karoline or Protocol 17, but they were too late. The world had seen enough. College campuses erupted in protest. Former comedians came forward claiming they had once received performance briefings before political interviews. A viral clip resurfaced of a 2016 monologue where an unknown cue card, visible for 2 seconds, redirect to safe topics if guest triggers Tier 2 response. Caroline's words had broken the veil, but it wasn't over. That night, an international hacker group breached the servers of a major media conglomerate. The files they released were titled simply Operation Mothlight Entertainment Asset Integration, 1991 to 2024. Over 4,000 pages. At the center of it all, an old scanned signature of a sitting U.S. senator dated 12 years ago. Karoline Leavitt had thrown the first stone. Now the system was starting to crack. And in a silent room beneath a building without windows, a man in a gray suit picked up a red phone and said only 5 words. "She's gone too far now." A cold rain fell over Washington, D.C. as Senator Reuben Cade stood in his office window, watching the wet pavement shine under police lights. Downstairs, news vans gathered like wolves. The city was suffocating with questions. And everyone wanted to know the same thing. Where was Karoline Leavitt? Her third video had dropped an hour earlier, but this one was different. It didn't feature her face, only her voice, calm, even distant, layered over grainy footage from a Senate committee. Room marked Classified Briefing, Human Legacy Archives. The audio revealed something even Capitol insiders never imagined hearing. A conversation from 2012 between a U.S. senator, a top CIA director, and an unnamed media executive. So we let comedians reframe crisis as culture. Laughter is safer than outrage and the public. They won't question what they enjoy. As long as they keep laughing, they won't start asking. And the candidates, we filter them early. Only the friendly ones make it past the velvet rope. The video ended on a single phrase in white text. "You're laughing there." Choosing, the internet imploded. Hashtags like hashtag, they re-choosing, hashtag ComedianGate, and hashtag Cancel Kimmel erupted across every platform. Even celebrities began distancing themselves. Jimmy Kimmel's silence had grown deafening. Its closest aides deleted their social accounts. His show had been wiped clean of clips for the past 2 years. Meanwhile, independent journalists and international outlets began running with the story. A German paper linked Karoline's first interview to a dormant Cold War psychological warfare protocol. An Indian news network published analysis of comedy as a weapon of pacification, citing previously ignored research, and then came the explosion no one could ignore. A former assistant producer from Jimmy Kimmel Live went on a live stream, trembling as he spoke. "I used to think it was just PR control, but we had meetings about framing, instructions on who to humiliate and who to humanize, especially political guests. There were lists, color-coded. They called it tear filtering." He broke down in tears. Across the city at a secure communications hub, Emma Navarro reviewed a fresh drop from her encrypted tip line. This one contained something she never expected, an internal Department of Defense directive dated 2004. Marked eyes only. Mothlight Protocol Domestic Entertainment Corridors. The document referenced funding pipelines between the Department of Defense and 5 major media networks. Among them, late-night shows, satirical news programs, and even certain social media influencer campaigns. Buried on the last page was a single-line reference. Subject Leavitt. Karoline, cleared contact, echo phase potential. Emma's heart raced. Karoline hadn't just stumbled into this. She was part of something, or had been until she defected. Suddenly, Emma's phone buzzed. A restricted number. No caller ID. A voice, modulated and mechanical, spoke calmly. "You're getting close, but it's not about comedy. It never was. That was the tool. The war is on perception. And you're inside it now. Watch your mailbox tomorrow. I'll give you one more piece." Then silence. The call ended. Emma sat frozen. Back at the Capitol, Senator Cade made a quiet call of his own. "Protocol containment failed," he said. "She breached echo phase. Media slipping. You need to proceed with option gray." The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. Understood. At that same hour, an anonymous Reddit post appeared. It contained a 17-second audio clip, two men arguing in what sounded like a government command center. Their voices were sharp, fast, urgent. She wasn't supposed to go public. We greenlit her for midterm noise, not full exposure. Then shut her down, full blackout. The post was deleted in less than 3 minutes. But not before. It was downloaded over 100,000 times. By morning, whispers turned to shouts. Protests began forming outside major television networks in New York and Los Angeles. A group of college students hacked a digital billboard in Times Square, replacing it with Karoline's quote, "You're used to guests playing along. I won't." Inside an unnamed military facility, a strategy team met under red lights. Screens flickered with facial recognition matches, behavioral logs, and geolocation trails. On the central screen, Karoline's face marked as active risk, Tier Alpha. A final line appeared under it. Location, unknown. Interception. In progress, the system wasn't cracking anymore. It was bleeding. A storm rolled over the Hudson River as the city braced for another chaotic day. The digital world was in freefall. Karoline Leavitt was now the most searched name on the planet. Her leaked voice messages, encrypted files, and cryptic warnings had created a global fever pitch. But no one could find her. Not the media, not the government, not even the intelligence agencies that once recruited her. Inside a cold briefing room at Fort Beaver, a dozen analysts sat in silence as footage played from Karoline's fourth video, released just minutes before. The room was sealed, phones confiscated, a coffee left untouched. The screen showed shaky infrared drone footage of a secure hangar in Nevada. Karoline's voice narrated, "You think power is about who wins elections? You think influence is? About policy, but the truth, the real truth. The people who shape your reality don't wear suits. They don't run for office, don't argue on TV. They operate behind the curtain. They design the curtain." Then the image cut to an internal government server map with glowing nodes labeled NBC Comedy Control, DoD Image Seeding, CIAMM Influence Units. Gasps filled the room. She had gotten inside, again, in a luxury apartment across New York. City Emma Navarro paced with a burner phone pressed to her ear. Her voice trembled. "I don't know how she's doing this. The networks are firewalled. Even whistleblowers are scared. But she's still 2 steps ahead of everyone." On the other end, a voice replied, slow and clinical. "You're not chasing Karoline anymore, Emma. You're chasing what she became the moment she stopped following orders. That's what scares them." Emma turned to the window. Police helicopters buzzed far off in the distance. Beneath them, 1,000 people marched outside Rockefeller Center holding signs chanting. One poster read, "The joke was on us." Meanwhile, in a shadowy control bunker in Virginia, Senator Reuben Cade stared at a red blinking cursor. A live feed showed Kimmel's abandoned studio. No audience, no crew. Just a single chair facing the camera, Karoline's chair. The feed was looping. "She's mocking the system now," Cade muttered. "She's telling them it's all theater." Another voice from a general across the room spoke grimly. "If she goes any further, the global optics shift. If we lose control of perception narrative, allies are already asking questions." Cade didn't blink. "Then initiate phase lock." Within minutes, encrypted kill switches were deployed to major platforms. Her accounts disappeared, her videos were scrubbed. Even backups started vanishing from private drives. But they were too late. Copies had already made it to Iceland, to Tokyo, to Johannesburg, decentralized uploaders. Pirate streams, podcasts, millions were watching, sharing, translating. In one of the final clips, barely a minute long, Karoline stood in front of an old broadcast tower. Wind tearing through her coat. She didn't blink. Her voice was level. "They built a media machine that fed you laughs instead of truth. Spat dressed propaganda in monologues, and you clapped. I did too once. But now I've seen what lies behind it. So will you. The video faded to black. Then came the ripple. A leaked document surfaced showing a classified briefing dated 5 years earlier, titled Use of Humor as Public Compliance Mechanism, Phase 3 Integration. It had Jimmy Kimmel's name on the recipient list. CNN cut to commercial. Then never came back. BBC issued a rare internal investigation into editorial influence. Al Jazeera ran a 2-hour special titled The Engineered Smile. Across America, the mood shifted. Comedy shows went dark. Hosts canceled. Writers walked out. Sponsors dropped. But Karoline was still missing. Some claimed to see her boarding a private plane in Romania. Others said she'd been detained in Argentina. A few believed she never left New York, just went underground, hiding in plain sight. One rumor said she'd entered a NATO secure site disguised as a journalist. Another claimed she had joined an AI resistance network designed to mimic her voice and release future messages posthumously. Emma received one final message, a file labeled Only Exit Script. She clicked a static screen. Then Karoline's face appeared. Calm, a trace of defiance in her eyes. This isn't about me anymore. It's about who gets to define reality. And if they can erase me, they can erase you. Then silence. Emma closed the laptop. The rain stopped. And somewhere deep in a bunker, a screen went black. The world waited. Every government channel, every encrypted newsroom, every intelligence server buzzed with static, metaphorical and literal. Karoline Leavitt hadn't been seen in over 48 hours, not since her final message had lit the digital sky on fire. In Washington, the Capitol was on lockdown, not from threat of violence, but of truth. Senator Reuben Cade walked briskly through a restricted corridor beneath the rotunda. A security badge clipped tight against his chest. His aides followed silently. One of them finally asked, "Sir, if she resurfaces, do we engage?" Cade didn't. "Stop walking. If she resurfaces, it's already over." Meanwhile, somewhere in Reykjavik, Iceland, a flash drive changed hands under the pale light of a parking garage. The man who accepted it wore an old NBC jacket. It was no longer with them. None of them were. But they had all once been a part of the system Karoline had torn apart. One monologue, one file, one sentence at a time. The flash drive contained everything. The full uncut Jimmy Kimmel interview. The post-show meltdown. Audio of executive. Producers panicking. Classified memos about media manipulation tools. Even a document marked Asset Leavitt Contingency. It all went live that night, and the world cracked open. Kimmel's show was gone. Not canceled, but evaporated. Every episode pulled. Syndication erased. Network statements denied. The show ever officially existed in the format claimed. The public didn't buy it. They remembered the moment. The sentence. "You're used to guests playing along. Jimmy, I won't." It became a chant, a rebellion, a protest slogan, a global headline. In London, massive crowds gathered outside the BBC with signs reading, "No more laugh tracks for lies." In Nairobi University, students painted murals of Karoline holding a microphone like a torch. In Seoul, hackers replaced entertainment pages with full transcripts of her interviews. Then came the strange part. Anonymous users on decentralized forums began sharing coordinates. One led to a chapel in Sicily where stained glass windows had been swapped for LED screens displaying Karoline's face. Another pointed to a train station in Estonia where a voice looped on repeat through the intercom, saying, "When laughter hides truth, the silence must speak." Governments couldn't keep up. Intelligence agencies scrambled to contain narratives. AI filters failed to block her content because it was everywhere now. In infinite versions, retranslated, reinterpreted, decentralized into thousands of pockets. But the final moment didn't come on screen. It came in a courtroom in New York. A class action lawsuit was filed, Leavitt, HALV, United States Media Trusts. The plaintiffs. Citizens, journalists, former comedians, even ex-CIA media liaisons. The charge: psychological manipulation through coordinated media programming. Inside the courtroom, Emma Navarro appeared as lead witness. When asked why she joined the suit, she held up a single sentence printed on paper. "You're used to guests playing along. I won't." She looked at the judge and said, "That sentence didn't just end a career. It opened the door to an entire system we were never supposed to see." Outside, the crowd stood in silence. No chants, no signs, just stillness. A drone flew overhead. Attached beneath it, a banner unfurled midair. Red letters against white. "The joke ends now." The trial didn't end in a verdict. It never could. Before judgment was reached, the entire media landscape had already changed. New platforms arose, P-owned, ad-free, publicly transparent. Trust shifted away from names and faces. It returned. 2 conversations, debates, real ones. Kimmel was never seen again. Some say he left the country. Others claim he was part of a witness protection program. One theory suggests he joined a silent order of ex-entertainers now living in remote islands, to repent for decades of laughter for hire. As for Karoline, Emma received one last message months later. It was a 3-second audio clip. A breath, a wind chime, and a sentence whispered in Karoline's voice. "Sometimes silence is louder than applause." No signature, no return address. Just silence. And a world forever different.